So we are officially back for another episode of the Tell No Lies podcast. You know what I was actually thinking for a while before this? I said, do I keep doing the episode number?
Yeah.
No, because then what if I'm at like 700? Like, what the fuck? I don't want to say that.
I mean,
like we're episode 799.
Well,
so I think the how I just introduced it is kind of what I was
well, this
thinking.
is the third in case anyone's counting.
Yeah, but you could put that in the title.
True.
You know, so I figured,
Right.
I was like, how do I say it nice and smooth without having to like throw what episode it is? Because do people really care about what episode number it is?
Formalities out the window. This is an
Anyways,
important episode, though.
It is. How's your week been?
It's been great.
Yeah?
I got a powerlifting competition coming up.
Yeah, I know you're excited for that.
Yeah. Been slaying the pounds, slaying the kilos.
What was the one you just did yesterday?
I benched 242 pounds yesterday.
I can't do that now with all my
Most men
injuries.
can.
Yeah.
Especially who weigh what I weigh.
Yeah, fair.
Yeah.
But I don't think people realize how strong you are.
Yeah. I'm still strong, very, very strong. But I used to be the fourth ranked all-time 165 powerlifter in the world for like 3 years. I'm still in the top 10
and
now.
Is that like a specific federation that is labeled like the top of the top? Like, how do you get solidified as the fourth in the world?
It's on this website. It's actually a cool thing that powerlifting does. It's on this website called Open Powerlifting. It's like a bunch of data nerds that got together and they're like, we're going to take all the historical data of every single powerlifting meet that has ever been and we're going to put it online. And they do it for free. I donate to their Patreon.
So how do you validate your numbers?
It has to be in a sanctioned meet and it has to be uploaded by an official meet director. There has to be rules and regulations. It's not like I can just say, oh, I did this, here's my thing. And then it's ranked all federations, it started, I think, in like the 90s is the data they have because they didn't keep it the same way then as they do now. But my first meet's on there and from 2012 all the way up to the last one I did in 2022 was the last time I competed. So it goes by DOTS score. Powerlifting has a standardized score. Like you can lift, I can lift, and irregardless of our gender and our weight, it will standardize our score. And that's how...
Based off of where you are.
That's
like
how you're
based off your weight?
It's like by sex, age, how much body weight you weigh, and how much you lifted, it gives you a standardized score. So I'm like, all time, anyone who's ever done powerlifting that's on that website, I'm like 110th. I used to be like 80th, but I've gotten knocked down some pegs since I stopped.
That's fair. I feel like that's very similar to like the start of where I was with high school and like my upbringing. But we talked about the sports and how you liked bodybuilding because it was, or powerlifting over bodybuilding because it's not objective to how you look, right?
Right.
You squat, whatever you squat, you win, right?
You did it or you didn't.
Yeah, correct. You can't have favorites. You can't be doing all those other things. And so I know you just mentioned about, what's our next section we're going to be talking about what people know me for, but now we talk about the beginning stages of how I became that, right?
Yeah.
And so a little backstory for me in the beginning, what I think made me like even more relevant to the masses in the beginning was how small I was before, and then what I was transforming myself to, which is completely different now, but in those moments. And so my backstory was very similar when it came to sports. I was always active in sports, but I wasn't necessarily tall. So, basketball was something that I had a passion for, but inevitably I wasn't tall enough. And so I got to a place in high school where I wanted to be a part of something, but I wasn't good enough for each thing that I had an interest in. And so fell in my lap. I ended up doing cross country for 4 years and being exceptional in it. But what I loved about that was the fact that it was time. If you ran the fastest time, you're number one, you're number two. There's no discrepancy there, right? Even if you got punished, which I got punished a couple times because in high school they wanted me to do morning runs at 7 a.m. on when you're off school. Like, who wants to do that?
In the summer?
Especially in high school.
Yeah.
We have other focuses, and that wasn't something I was good at, but it wasn't like a love of mine. There's people on there that sacrificed their mornings and all that. So they would punish me, put me in a JV race to start the season, and I would win, sometimes even win the whole event for JV, and my score would be better than like 4 of the guys on our team. So would they have to put me on? So, that's kind of my back history when I was running. So I got a full ride scholarship to San Jose State. And I decided to leave and go pursue that, get a free, education out of it, and continue to test.
Did you live there? Or was that close to home?
So I lived in the Inland Empire. So Chino Hills is where I went to high school, and so when I graduated from there, then I went straight out to San Jose. So I don't think I'd ever even been to the north side of NorCal or like what that lifestyle, other than the visit, you know, they swoon you and they make you feel like all the things. I mean, it's a long time from now. So I went there, instantly hated it.
What was your major?
I was just doing general ed.
Just whatever.
I didn't have
college.
College. I didn't have a direction. It was just, I feel like I was just happy to be there and see what that next phase is. And at the time too, I was working at In-N-Out, which is still a passion of love of mine for food.
He gets In-N-Out every day.
Yeah, I didn't get it today.
Except today, because it's Easter. It's closed.
But so I still worked that job with her because you can transfer. So everything was lined up perfectly. I just hated the lifestyle. Like the amount of hot girls to not hot girls was not very good. You know, the pace
not
of life,
enough hot girls?
No, it was like for every 20, maybe one. Okay. You know, like, and so it just wasn't my vibe. Slow pace. The people just, I never fit into that process. And running was always a chore more than it was that I wanted to do it. I was just good. So if it's getting me places, why not keep doing it? Yeah. So I was only a semester in and I was like, yo, this isn't for me. And then I probably was a little bit homesick too. So I moved back home. I just gave up the full ride. I was like, this isn't for me. And I moved back. And at that time I was going to like more of the, like, what is it? The junior colleges.
Yeah.
Which I think at the time was like Mount Sac or something. It's more inland. And, you know, I was going there, but then now I'm thinking, okay, there's no running involved. I don't want to. So like, what's my next phase? And so when I was running too, my coach would always push me to go in the gym, but I was one of those people where when I would go through 24-hour fitness, I'd go straight to the basketball court. I'd skip all the weights. So now that I'm in this phase, I remember I did this run one day with one of my good close girlfriends at the time. After we finished, she made a comment, not that it affected me, but it made me like think outside the box of like, I agree with you because I'm a runner, but she said I looked like an anorexic patient. And like all my life I was skinny. I think I was 120, 125.
You showed me a picture.
Yeah,
you were
super skinny. Yeah. So, I mean, I could run for days. You know, it's like there's nothing there. So
125 pounds.
125 when I graduated for sure.
Wow.
So again, when I talked about the transformation, that's why it became such a, oh man, that's where I am, like thinking I can't get to where he is. And so that's where the inspiration lied. So after that moment, I don't know why that was just that trigger point for me to be like, you know, she's right. I'm not running anymore. There's no objective there. Why not better my body? Yeah. And I wasn't insecure. I was still confident in who I was, but I also knew my place. Right. If I was going to get in a fight, like, you're going to beat my ass. There's no discrepancy here. Yeah. You know, so I was never, maybe some people would direct it to me as an ego thing, but I would make them feel stupid for trying to hit me or like fight me when you know you're going to win. Yeah. It was like the mind manipulation, you know, to get them away from me. But anyway, so, so I hit up a buddy of mine at the time that had already like mentioned about working out. So I was like, yo, bro, I'm ready. Let's do this. I just had a kick in me after that conversation with that girl. And so I got into it. Now, the downside to lifting with my buddy at the time is he didn't train legs. Like, yeah, that was it. That was like, and I'm a new guy, so
upper body guy only.
Exactly. So we prioritized that. So that became a struggle down the road, but started getting into it. You know, loved every aspect of it. My goal at that time was just eat anything in sight. You know, to put on weight, and I think I was like 3 months in, and even back then there was no Instagram. I think it was on Facebook. Yeah, that's it. Like there was no Instagram at that time, and so what do you call it? I don't know how we dabbled into it. There was like a NutriShop and they were selling a pro hormone. Now back then, now it's illegal. Yeah, but big time. Back then it was you could buy it over the counter. It was the more expensive one. And I don't know where the spark was. Maybe my buddy that I was training with like influenced, because he's like, I'll take it too. So it was called Trend X, which a lot of people know about it, I feel. And
so how many months after you started working out till you did that?
I want to say 3 months of working out, and I just was not progressing the same way. And obviously I'm skinny, so I needed to eat more. Yeah. Well, these pro hormones are going to do the trick to get me up to those, you know, the weight that I wanted to. So took it, you know, the way that it was dosed. We overdid it right out the gates. Like,
of course, it says two.
It says two. It says like 2 bottles max. Dude, I was doing like 3. But you know, the downside of those pro hormones is like a lot of people are getting bitch tits.
Yeah, gynos.
Yeah, it was really bad for those because it's a pill. So to formulate, it's just more chemicals, harsh on your liver. Right. I just lucked out. I never had those issues, but you know, it's crazy. I think like 3 months of doing that, like I gained from 125 to 160. I was like a different person. Dang. And I just got more into fitness. and I felt like the old crowd that I was hanging out with no longer aligned with my goals. And fitness became more relevant. Well, at the time, how do you make money as a fitness person? It's still kind of foreign. You would just see the ones at 24. Again, Instagram's not a thing.
Yeah.
No one's using it for anything. So if you wanted to be a fitness guy, you were a trainer, right?
Yeah.
And how do you become a trainer? You got to get yourself more known. So I remember I had some brief conversations with my mom at the time, and she's like, you should move to Orange County. That's where the rich people are, the people that are in shape. It's by the beach. And so she put that idea in my head. So what is it? We said I was 19 and a half when I first started lifting. I would say probably about another year passed, maybe a year and a half. And then that's when I finally decided to move to Orange County. At the time of also moving, I also was with my first love. We were in a relationship, so it made more sense even to move in that direction. So I'm like, all right, I'm going to see where this fitness holds. At the time, I think I got fired from In-N-Out for too many write-ups. And I had just a normal, I think, job at Raw Sushi. And so I was able to transfer over to, I think that's a big thing, right? When you move to a different city, can you transfer your job, especially when you're working those types of jobs?
Yeah.
So I was able to get that, and I worked this other busing job. And so I moved there, and I remember my goal was just to find a place around my price range. I think at the time it was $650, and that was
Did you move with that girl?
No, she didn't move with me. So she already lived in the Orange County area.
Oh, okay.
So and she was still, I think, living at home. So at the time when I moved out there, I was able to be on my own, and then also closer.
Okay.
So anyway, I moved there. My goal was just to find a place. And so I found this one right on the peninsula, but it was with 3 dudes that were 40 plus. None of them matched with me at all. But I was like, I got to get in here. That's my goal.
How could you afford a place on your own at that age doing what you were doing? You needed roommates, several of them.
Yeah. So I moved in with them, and I started pursuing the, more of the fitness thing. And I think somewhere in that time period, she introduced me, because that was one of the things, she introduced me to Instagram. And it was, I think we talked about this. It was you posted a picture of this dog, I had pictures where I was holding an alcohol bottle or something stupid.
It wasn't your daily life.
No, none of that was even in existence. And so, I moved there, and I would say within a month or 2 of living there, she got in this crazy accident, and it just became very toxic. Her family was involved. They were very toxic. And so long story short, we ended up breaking up, and it was pretty bad, the ending of it. And so not only am I moving to a new place that I've never been in my life, on my own too, because up until that point I lived with my mom. So I was in, and then on top of that too, when I was transitioning, remember we talked about how Instagram was new, I was posting pictures of myself, but selfie wasn't a thing. And so it was more oh, this dude's conceited.
Yeah.
He's taking pictures of himself. He's full of himself. So when I was transitioning out of my, where I lived in high school, and the transition there, my friends just no longer aligned.
Yeah.
And so you have to deal with the lingering effects of people calling you names or saying certain things, but you got to turn the cheek. So I had that going. My ex, we split, and then she became friends with them out of, just to piss me off.
Your old friends?
Because they were totally egging it on type of thing. So it was clarity for me that I was in the right place because I'm going somewhere else.
Yeah.
May not make sense at the moment. And super random. So I was in that bad place, and I randomly get this message on Facebook from this dude. I had no clue who he was. I don't know how it popped up, whatever. His message was pretty short. He elaborated how my ex and his ex used to be best friends, and we were dating them at the same time. We just didn't know.
Oh, crap.
We didn't know at all.
Yeah.
So I thought the message was weird. It was on Facebook. He's like, let me meet you at the gym. And again, I lived in Newport, so he lived at or he was working at one of the restaurants. He's like, I'll come on my break. I was like, whatever, that's just what it is. Came down, we shoot the shit, and then before you know it, we were best friends. It was the perfect friend that I needed at the time to pivot me to where my purpose was really for moving, and not get distracted on the the downside of it. Oh, you lost the first relationship and it was very taxing. We were we were in it together type of thing.
That makes sense, because they were best friends, and then you guys became best friends. So obviously you guys had similar interests.
Yeah. I think the story of the fact that we had the similar they were best friends too, but we didn't know each other.
Yeah.
I think that was the part where I was like, yo, maybe I can get some details.
Yeah.
So we became friends. He lived, I think, with his parents or something at the time. And so I'm doing the fitness thing. I'm working the jobs, and I'm like, how do I get from a place of doing the fitness thing and I want to grow more, but I can't do it if I'm not doing more of it. you
Yeah.
know, so I had to, you know, do what I could until there was relevancy. And so, you know, just self-promoting, again, just picture yourself. There was no, you know, sell anything. It was just trying to, you know, grow your Instagram. You know, so I'm doing that for, you know, a couple months. And then I was also working as a bar back at one of the nightclubs. And when I was there one of the nights, I remember a guy came in, he was in good shape. And I got to a point where I was even more months in now. And I'm like, okay, like I'm getting bigger, but I'm not, my abs are going, you know? So I'm like I need to make more changes. So I hit up a buddy that was more chiseled than I remember. Back then, the information was like minimal. Like, you know, no one knew shit. You can go online now and you could just find it anywhere.
And you had never been in this sphere. You were not like a fitness guy. You were an athlete.
Think about the fitness back then. How did you get noticed? You did the shows,
right?
Magazines. I mean, that's it. There was no Instagram or anything to promote any of that. Like, that's how you got promoted.
The magazines were huge. Steven had like a collection of them I found one time. Like, that's how you got workout plans. That's how you got diet plans. That's how you knew all the bodybuilders. And social media has replaced what that all was, but it was so
even got
slow.
to a point where you're telling about the magazine you're in through Instagram.
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of what it is now.
Yeah.
So at that point, you know, I had a buddy of mine that gave me a nutrition plan, and it was doing the justice, and I was starting to see like things in my body that I never seen, but I was eating chicken all the time. Just a very basic ass plan, but I was committed to it.
Yeah.
And so I saw my body change. So I was really in that next progression. So when I was working at night, I remember I would have my meals in the back, like they could smell it because there's no food at the club, you know, but that's just how my mindset was. At some point, I'm going to pivot to something that's going to get me closer to what that looks like. So I'm in the club, and I remember there was one of the bottle service girls that her boyfriend at the time was like a ripped dude, and he just so happened to have like his own team. And at that time, which they're still relevant now, I mean, there's teams everywhere, you know, but that was like the beginning stage of like having teams for bodybuilding shows and stuff like that. And so I don't remember where the conversation lined up, but he gassed me up and he was like, dude, I could totally prep you. We'll do a show. And I was like, shit, this is like the next thing I guess I got to do. How else am I going to get noticed? Right. Yeah. I mean, people did shows. Right. And so, I started prepping with the team, and I remember we would go to like different bodybuilding shows, and I just got more into it. And I was like, you know, this is dope. So at the time, I'm still doing the Instagram thing, and I had like 5,000 followers, and then I'm doing it more. And that's what I was telling you earlier. Like, I found a system in place where the algorithm was so new back then. The goal was just to get on that little popular page. As small as it was, there wasn't as many users. So I noticed over time that like they got on there based off how much likes they were getting in just 10 minutes.
And that was it.
Yeah. So I was like, dude, I wonder if there's a way I could just gas it up. So long story short, I found a way, and I started getting on there, and I was just growing exponentially, you know, to a point where I was like, I think I was at 10K. And I remember shortly after that, you know.
And this is like 2012?
When was this?
This is
2012. So I was like 22 and a half.
Early Instagram, early.
Yeah. And what do we say? Instagram started 2010?
10, yeah.
So, I mean, up until that point, 2 years, how many people really know about the app before, you know, before
I didn't
it
even
starts?
get on it till like 2017.
Yeah.
And I'm older than you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that was, let's see, 2012. And so I had a big enough following, and, you know, at that time, if you wanted to have conversation with somebody, like to chat with them or flirt with them, was Kick Messenger.
Yeah.
That was what it was called. Which
Instagram did not have Messenger at this time, guys. It was a separate app.
Yeah, Instagram only had pictures.
Yeah.
That's it. And
you couldn't even do videos. Yeah.
Nope, none of that. And so the way that you would flirt with somebody at that time was you either gave them your Kick Messenger over time, because at first that wasn't even a thing either. I would just go to an old picture, and you'd put your number, and then they would get it, and you would delete the comment out of their thing, because that was the only way to get in contact with them. But they started to progress over the next year or so, and then Kick was one of the things of how you message people, and everyone had it in their bio, kind of like how you could just DM now.
Yeah.
And I remember I got a message from, it was Joey Swole, and I had heard of him through pictures or whatever, and he was just chatting with me about life, you know, stuff like that. Little did I know in that time period he was also like recruiting, you know, and they already had a scheme of who they were looking for. I think they were also smart on how they were looking too at the time. It was like who had the big following. Do you remember who Nate Diesel was?
That name sounds familiar.
He was one of like same. He had a big following too. He had like this like white blonde hair. Paige was big on there. It was just the front runners, and you know I was up there as well. So I remember we had a conversation. He was chatting about like supplements and yada yada yada, and was like, you know, maybe this is an opportunity. He had a big following too, like a little bit less than me, but it was still big. So I was like, you know, maybe this is an opportunity for me to go somewhere. And again, I got a part of this team, so I'm prepping for a show. You know, so I'm like,
For
dude,
bodybuilding.
for my first physique show. So I'm like, yo, the stars are aligning perfectly. You know, like I got this guy that, you know, is talking about a supplement company. That sounds like a dream to do. Like I see the supplements in NutriShop.
That's exactly what you wanted.
And then I'm like, okay, I'm doing the show. So I'm going where I need to go. And so I think, let's see, the show was in February. So I started prepping in November. And I think like a month after that, he's talking to me more, and I know he's recruiting other people, and then we have more conversations, and then he brings up the idea of like jumping on with them, and he's like, I want you to talk to
Tell the audience what them is.
Oh, wanted me to jump on with Shredz. That's true. Yeah.
Yes.
So, and that's where, you know, Shredz first came into
I think we should talk about what Shredz is for people who don't know, because like I didn't join Instagram in 2017. It was like 2012, at the same time as you, but like back then there wasn't these kind of companies, so like.
True.
I don't
know. Like, I would think that they had the core ones, like maybe, what was like the.
Well, everything was through the vitamin shops and shit.
But you could still buy them there.
Yeah.
But like, what's an OG like company that's been around forever? Like Dynamite.
Yeah.
And
Dymatize.
Like, Dynamite. Yeah, Dymatize. There's like
BSN.
Yeah, stuff like that. So like they still had those companies. Those were like the OGs.
Yeah.
I think it was very much similar to like even in that time period too. We were big on social media for fitness. But the fitness world didn't know us. They knew the Jay Cutlers and the Phil Heath because they were in
people
magazines.
in the magazines. People did the shows.
They knew nothing about Instagram.
So what kind of products did Shredz sell?
They had all the basic ones, you know, and their objective was to please the masses. So it wasn't strong on purpose.
Like protein, creatine. So
just like anything else. But they started with just the bottles first. We didn't get protein until way later.
Okay.
So it was just bottles. They had like, I don't remember all the different stacks. The main ones that people would know for Shredz is like the alpha female stack and the alpha male stack. The female was like 3 bottles and the male was 4.
What is it, like a fat burner?
It was like for the girls, yeah, like fat burner. Like what is the little boosters they have? Like I can't remember all the different ones, but to harden you, to tone you, you know, just the different bullshit lines.
Was it pro hormones too?
No, those were like the most basic.
Okay.
You know, and you know, as we grow and I tell more about that story, you'll see where some of that could have caused hate too. But our goal was to please the masses, even from the very beginning. So, it was just the basic, you know, alpha male and and that came over down the road too. I think they were just individual bottles in the beginning. Like Shredz was the fat burner. We had like Diesel, and that was like your test booster. But we didn't. We just had pills. We had no protein at all.
Okay.
Because you don't really make money with that.
And then at the time that you got recruited, like how big was the company? Like how?
So at that time, it was just Joey. Arvin was the CEO, and I think they had some smaller guys that weren't really big. That were on a part of Shredz as we grew, but they always stayed that low, even though they were on first. So I think their goal was just to start recruiting. So, you know, when they were doing the recruiting process, I remember they also were in contact, like I told you, Nate Diesel, and they had signed him. And I was like, damn, they like signed him. Like, I wonder if they're going to sign me. And they kind of played that on purpose. I don't remember. I think maybe like 2 weeks, I want to say like 2 weeks after they signed him, they called me, but they tried to make it seem like it was like they were telling me no. And then they ended up signing me, and I was like super excited. You know, for some reason, you know, he had asked me like, how much money do you make? And at that time I was working 2 jobs.
Yeah.
In OC, I remember I told you I was working to pay the bills, but every free time I had was gym.
Yeah.
And so, what do you call it? I told him how much I was making, and I was barely making enough to pay everything.
That you split with the 4 40-year-old guys. Yeah.
With the what?
With the 3 40-year-old guys.
Yeah, exactly. No, I think and you know what? Actually, perfect time too. So at that time period, to go back real quick with the guys, I only lived with them for several months, and mine and Chad's friendship continued to grow. And so we got to a point right before I started prepping to move in together. So I no longer was with the guys anymore. Okay. So I was living with Chad. We were closer knit in our friendship, and you know, now I'm getting pursued by Shredz. So when he had asked me, I'm living. I think I was paying $800 now instead of 6 something. But I was also, you know, comfortable enough to switch. It was a better situation for me as well. So I told him how much I was making, and he's like, you'll make more, I guarantee it. And this was right before I signed, and I don't know why, in that moment I believed him. And maybe it was because I also believed in myself too.
Yeah.
And that's where I wanted to go, so why wouldn't I take the risk? And, you know, we talk about that, you know, all day, every day in life today is like, take the risk, right? And so I didn't even think twice.
If it doesn't make you nervous, it's not worth it.
Yeah, so I was like, let's do it. And at that time, I was also prepping for that show. It was 45-day prep. I remember I looked at the picture. It was a 45-day prep, but I was already lean, so I don't think I needed that much time.
Yeah.
And so, so I signed with them. But that first month was a struggle for me because I'm not getting paid every 2 weeks. It was once a month. That's how they structured it.
Okay.
Was
you left your paycheck and had to wait.
Yeah. So I think one of the pivotal times was that I couldn't even afford. Which I forgot to say too, which I can say now because I'm going to bring it up. But 3 months after, like I would say a year of lifting from 19 to about 20 or whatever, that's when I decided like pro hormones were worse for me. Why not just do the real thing?
Yeah.
So then I remember a buddy was like, dude, those are way worse for you than just pinning.
So you went all in.
So I was like, dude, I went all in. So
you were like 22?
21, like I would say. And I started doing it. But then I realized when I was doing it too, if I don't eat right, I'm not going to look the way I could possibly look. So that's where the healthy eating. And then it got me to a place where now I'm doing a show. And then I'm getting signed. And I remember I couldn't afford the gear anymore, because I also, I was like.
You lost your paycheck.
Yeah, And I think it was like 2 months, like, because I was at a weird period of quitting. But I remember that day too. I just went in. I was like, I'm quitting. And at that time too, when I was living with Chad, we had the same job on one of the other ones. And I was like, dude, I'm doing it. Like he was making more. He was the manager. I was just like bussing tables and shit. And so I quit. And I want to say like a month, maybe a month after that, that's when the Fit Expo is. Do you remember that? The LA Fit Expo?
Yeah.
So at that time, I think we had signed Nate Diesel, we signed me, another guy named Alex Turner. And so we're gaining steam of like, and we all had big following. So everyone's seeing us, more and more. So
you had a booth and everything.
So when we did the LA Fit Expo, it was just to walk around.
Okay.
This is the first time that we were going to like
just collectively.
Also me too. Like, so I had met Joey maybe a couple months before when he was recruiting me, but meeting virtually, like on the messaging back and forth. So in January, when they decided to like put together this like meetup, they rented like an Airbnb in LA, and we were all going to stay there, and it was just guys.
Yeah.
So like the Alex Turner, Joey, me, Arvin. I'm trying to think if there was anyone else. Tyler, which was one of the beginning ones that I was mentioning that was already there, but never like surfaced higher. And so we were all going to meet there. Arvin was going to meet there. And our goal too was also to recruit Paige. She was going to be in town for the expo. And she was like our next, like we didn't have any girls.
Yeah.
So she would have been the face. So we all linked up there. And I remember Joey picked me up from the airport, have a picture, of when that was. And that was January 2012.
13.
13?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, 2013. Yeah. And again, we were just getting on the map, like as far as like who we were, and at a small rate. So we meet all there. Joey picks me up. We have a good old time. And I remember too, I was prepping, and like he was getting in my head, like because he was like, "Oh, you shouldn't." You know how people do that when you're prepping, like they have their way and your coach has another.
Yeah.
Well, I was still new at the time, so I was like, "Let me take a sip real quick." And Joey's jacked, so I'm like, if he's telling me to do this, like, fuck, maybe my coach is wrong. So, like, I was so confused, like, with all of that, too, going into it. Like, that was not the best thing mentally to, like, take my food there, try and diet there, meeting these new people, getting their opinions, because everyone has their own. And why wouldn't I listen to him? Like, he was fucking huge at the time to me. And so, that was just another mix in it. But, yeah, we ended up walking around. I remember we all met Paige. And then shortly after we met Paige, they ended up signing her too, and then she was like the generational face of what the females was.
Yeah,
and she always stayed like the top tier there. But that was our goal. But same thing, she was recruited the same way. Like she had a following that was big at the time in the fitness space. And again, no one knew Phil Heath, and none of them were on here. It was just us.
Did anybody know you guys when you were like walking around collectively?
And that was the first time that we walked around, for me, that I walked around and people were noticing who I was and like wanting to take pictures.
Like recognize you.
Recognize me. And then obviously being with the group, we put it on the map where we were like the main ones that people were highlighting, like, and if you're on there, you're not doing it. You're just like, oh my God, who are these people?
Did you have a moment like you're a 21-year-old kid, you just like got all this size, like your dreams are coming true. You're like, I'm going to move here. I'm going to do this. I'm going to go all into this fitness thing and give it my all. You're doing a bodybuilding show the next month and it's like happening. Like people recognize you. Did you ever have a moment where you're like,
I think in the beginning I was just like, it's the nervousness, right? Like you're just as nervous as them. And especially when like, why do they want to take a picture? You don't understand, right? It's an uncomfortable position when you've never been there. So I would be just as nervous. So I remember like in those moments, like they'd be like, "Oh, I follow you on Instagram." I'm like, "Thanks."
That's it.
Like, what do you
End
say?
of conversation.
Like, it wasn't until it became normal that I started to realize, like, yeah, regardless if I'm nervous or not, they're more nervous than me.
Yeah.
So I have to be the superior one. So, like, ask more questions or make it more inviting after they say that. Because it's an awkward thing to say. Like, oh, I follow you. Like, what do you say after that? What would you say after that?
Well, Stephen once taught me something that was really important, and it stuck with me forever. It's like, when someone is excited to meet you, that's the first time they're getting to meet Devin Physique. Like, it's a moment for them that they're not going to forget. And it's like, it's your duty to not be an asshole and to give them that memorable moment, because unfortunately the interaction's not reciprocated. When you're meeting hundreds of people, you don't remember every single one, but they remember that that's the time they met you.
Correct.
So I just always am like, oh my God, that's great. Like, where are you from? What do you do? And just ask.
Yeah, that's what I would say. Like how long you've been following me, something that gets them to feel more relaxed, because that's usually what would happen.
There's being interesting or interested, and at that moment you want to be interested because you're already interesting. You know what I mean?
Yeah, so it took some time. So I think that whole experience was like different. So how do you've never been in those places to know you need to do that. Again, I was just as nervous as them, so in my head I'm not thinking like who needs to be like less nervous and take the initiative. So that was a cool experience. And then, we all kind of went our separate ways, but that was like the first, real interaction between at the time, the people that were a part of Shredz. And then, shortly after, it just got more into the whole aspect of Shredz. I'm still prepping for the show. I have my show in February.
And you guys all got along.
Who, like the athletes and stuff? Yeah, I mean, we were all close knit. I think that was something that always made us very unique. Is from the beginning to the end. Well, to some parts of the end, it was like close knit family. We were always in contact with one another and stuff like that. And I remember one of the nights, because I was a part of that team, it was called Boom Fitness. And the cool thing with that is that was the first time I built like team-oriented stuff. Like I started to get more friends that way because I'm part of a team now, and now we're friends with each other on Instagram, and I know them. So obviously that dynamic helped to be a part of that going into Shredz. But it was like I was outgrowing them into the next phase with Shredz too. So I'm in the last stages before my show. And I remember my name was Devi Boom Fitness. That was my Instagram name because I was just connected to them. So I don't remember how the conversation had, but me and Joey got on a phone and we were talking about like what should the name be to switch it. Yeah. Obviously Joey had Joey Swole, so that was, it fit his character, but I'm not as big as him, or we're not trying to make the same thing. So that's where, Devin Physique first originated from. Was it because you were doing a physique competition? I think that. I mean, that seems like the logical. It would go hand in hand, yeah. Yeah, so I mean, that's. I would say that sounds about right. Like, and you've been that since that day. Since that day, it hasn't switched. Yeah. And that was like right in the early stages. So I do the show. They come out again for the show. That's the next time. The Shredz team. It was just like Joey and Arvin. They surprised me, and they came. That was shortly after, because remember I met them in January. Were they living at the time? So they were living in Jersey. Okay. They lived in Jersey City, and they were living in the same place, like the same apartment. And so they surprised me. They came out for the show, and then after that show, I was still living with Chad, and at this time, Chad's the only one working at the place now, right? And I'm not there; I'm home. And he'd spend a 8-hour day just working, and he'd come home and be like, "How much did you make today?" And I was like, "I don't know, a couple thousand." He was just all pissed off, and he's like, "You sat here all day on your phone and you made $2,000." And I'm like, "Yeah." So one of the things with Shredz that when they were pitching the initial thing to me was that made it so different than what was already out. I remember we were talking about like different brands, but the difference was they didn't sell wholesale at all. It was You couldn't get it in a store. The only way you had access to it was through the internet, their website. Yeah, exactly. So it was like direct to seller, like boom, So that kept exclusivity within Shredz because that was the only way to get it. It didn't dilute the brand or anything like that. And then on top of that, we all got links. And at that time, who we had like Paige, Joey, the core people. I mean, we were pretty much the three that most recognized and remembered. We all had our own. So it was like devin.getshredz.com. So it wasn't like a coupon code. No, we had our own. It was your own link. Yeah. So there was like the shreds.com or whatever, or Get Shredz or whatever it was in the very beginning. And mine was devin.getshredz.com. So you would post that, but you would also just message people that, right? So at that time, I mean, I have pictures. Like, it was just a very weird way of promoting the brand, right? But we had steam on the internet. People didn't back then. There was more consumers than competitors. So what we were doing was just unheard of. So the way that they structured it is we all got our own website, and then on top of that, like I said, they had theirs. The difference that alluded people more to us was because ours was discounted on purpose.
Yeah.
Theirs was full price. Did people still buy from the Shredz one? Yeah, absolutely. But there was one that was discounted too. So that allowed us to get more people buying from our pages because they see that
if I can use a code and save money, why would I buy
Correct.
it? Yeah.
Yeah, so it allowed people that were following whoever to go to their people, and that's what we ended up generating over time was that. But on top of that, when let's say we talked about the stacks and we were growing stuff, the structure came in place. Like the alpha male was 4 bottles. Every bottle I made, which was $15, I got 5. And the girls was 3. I got 5 of them. So $5 for each one. So the goal was to sell those.
So you would make $20 per male stack and $15 per female stack, just from someone going to the website and buying it with your link.
Yes. Exactly.
That's
and remember, the way that you got them over to sell them was Kick Messenger.
Right.
So if I promoted it on Instagram at the time, then it was just Kick message me for more info, and then I would sell them on there.
So you would just be kicking people all day, responding to people all day, and then your buddy's just working for dollars an hour.
Mm-hmm, exactly. And so one of the things that also kept it competitive, and like I said, that made it close-knit, was the fact that we made it competitive. We had a group chat, and it was we would say boom to each other every time somebody had a sale. Joey was really competitive with it, and he would always outsell us. So he'd pop up in the morning with 3 booms, and he's already had 3 zeros. So we'd always have this competition.
Just all day boom.
Yeah, just
boom.
Who could sell the most. And it kept a drive where we were pushing more. Joey's I'm gonna go sell one right now. I'll be back in 10 minutes, and then boom, he'd sell one. It was just we were taunting each other. So what were you gonna say?
You guys just had the world at your oyster because no one else was really doing this at the time.
Exactly. So, and again, it was that exclusiveness of knowing they're buying from our link and not there. So, I mean, that's obviously something that Arvin planned to be able to give back to the athletes, then put more money in his pocket.
Yeah.
So after I do my first show, I was already, in a place where I felt like I could do another one, and then I was just more influenced. I had mentioned Tyler earlier as one of the beginning guys, so he ended up saying he'll prep me. Let's go right into another one. So I was like, all right, let's do it. And I already didn't like the first one. I think I got 3rd, but I just didn't like.
Did you get any notoriety or increase
Being part of Boom was heavy because the teams were so big back then. So it was building Instagram's team, and there was more other people that had followings too, but they weren't still significant though. But it was that competitive drive there. But after the show was done, that first one, I changed my name. It was I elevated to Shredz. I already knew I didn't want to do another show, but they wanted me to, so I just did it. But I already knew that wasn't going to continue for me. And so that Boom Fitness no longer is relevant, and I feel like I was already outgrowing them anyways. So I just completely just stopped re-signing up. They were my friends forever in that moment, but I was no longer a part of that team because I wasn't doing shows after this second one. So it was in Jersey. They're come up here, we're going to do have a little booth or whatever. Arvin was talking about that. And so I go up there, I do another show. It was terrible results for me. I think I got last.
The prep was not good?
Traveling and just all the thing. But it just got me closer to Shredz and seeing more opportunities. And they're obviously, trying to get into, we train at Bev Francis's gym and got to meet
which is an incredible gym. If you've ever gotten the chance to go.
Yeah, so we got to train for free. They're we're super good to us and all that stuff. And then did the show that weekend. And then after I came back home, I want to say maybe 2 months after that second show, because the next show was in March. So we're coming into the summer. I remember I had a phone call conversation with Arvin, and he pitched this idea to me at the time where he wanted to, He wanted to move me to Jersey. A lot of the people that we had, they lived on the East Coast.
So he just wanted to bring the whole team together.
So I was a pivotal piece, and so for him, it made sense at the moment based off the things that we were supposed to do over this next year, that having me there made more sense than keep continually flying me there. So he pitched this idea of hey, I want you to move here. Mind you, I'd never been on the East Coast in my life.
Besides that show.
Just for that show. Yeah. That was just so quick. And so he's going into it, explaining what he foresees and all these other things. And, money's continuing climbing for me month after month. I'm making more and more. So I'm also looking at, okay, this is an opportunity. They're going to pay for everything. My rent, I don't have to pay for that. The only thing at that time I think I had to pay for was my phone bill, and then again, I wanted to show my commitment. So I'm all in. I mean, I quit my job.
So you didn't have a salary. You just were making commission.
No, it was all commission. Yeah,
Okay.
for a while, several years, it was commission based always.
Yeah. Okay.
But we were making so much that it
Didn't matter.
I was making more than my buddy at the time that was a full manager doing the max hours.
Yeah.
So so he's telling me all these things and wanting me to move there and all these. And I said, well, my first thought was, what about Chad? Like he's my best friend. I can't just leave him here.
Yeah.
And he already had an idea that he's like, I figured you'd, say that. So Chad's going to come too if he wants. And I was like, what the fuck? Like, this is crazy.
That's
like,
awesome.
Okay, cool. So I was super excited. So I remember, I don't know if it was the same day or if it was the next day. I went into Chad's room and I was like, hey man, I got off the phone with Arvin. He told me he wants me to Jersey. He was like super sad, but I was like, but you got to come too. And he was like so excited. So it was really wild too. Cause like everything that was going on in our lives, they just meshed. Right.
Yeah.
So it made our friendship what it was, like all the way through, like to have that happen, all those different things. So, shortly. So we were like, dude, when does he want us to move there? And he wanted us to move like ASAP. So I
yesterday.
think, like March, April, like within by June. And we had just moved into that place. So I think we were only like 6 months in. So we had to break the lease early. And
Did they pay for that?
No, we had to pay the funds.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I don't think I even brought it up to him. I did it. But at that time I was making more money. So I don't think that was a stress for me like it was before. And also on side of that too, I said, not only does he have to come, he said, but he's getting a job too.
Yeah.
He's going to have him be a part of like the back end. So he's able to quit his job. And so, yeah, we just decided, all right, we're going to take your car. I had a Tacoma at the time, so I sold it. We're going to take your car, we put all our stuff in it and just ship it there. So we did that, and then we got on a plane and we were out like within like 2 months of him having this convo, which is just wild to think, right? But again, my goal was like, I want to show I'm committed. And if I do all these things, they're going to see how serious I am about it, right? Some people talk about it and then some do it. So I was just in that mode. Like I already quit my job. Like I'm all in.
Yeah.
So yeah, we ended up, I told my mom and she was like shocked. Obviously didn't want me to move that far. And then we moved to Jersey and we lived in that same building that Joey and Arvin were already living in. And it was like Gotham City. I was like, dude, where the fuck am I? Like we were in Jersey City, which I know nothing about other than to find out that's ghetto. And like, by the time that I was no longer there, I considered it the devil's asshole. That's what I
really
ended up. Little did I know that's what I was going to end up calling it. But we trucked our stuff over there.
How did you get around since you didn't have a car?
Well, the first couple of days, the cool thing with there is they had a gym in there, so like I didn't have to leave.
Mm-hmm.
But the car only took like a week after we landed.
Okay.
Because they were shipping it, and I think they took it early. You know how sometimes across country it takes like a week.
Yeah.
Have you ever done that before?
No, I drove.
Every time you've done it?
I weighed the options, yeah. Because a lot of times it's really expensive and they're not on time. So when you need your car, if like going to work and everything, because back then there was no Uber or Lyft or anything, right? In 2014? I don't think so.
No, I don't think so. No,
so you're walking.
Definitely not. I don't even know when
taking
that
the
was.
bus.
That'd be a long time ago. Yeah, so we moved there, and this is in June, and then right out the gates we started doing photo shoots and videos and all these crazy things, like whatever they had in mind. Like I was just there at their disposal to start doing ads and all those different things. And so every year Olympia is in September, right? So we move in June, July, getting to be familiar with the place. My intention was never to like feel home there. I think that was the mindset always.
Just
I knew I was going back.
Yeah.
I knew this wasn't home. So I always treated it that way. So I never really like tried to have friends or anything like that. So I was really fixated on whatever Shredz had to do for me. So we go into our first Olympia, and that's when we're going to have our first booth. I'm going to have, pictures of me, the whole nine. So that was a whole nother experience in itself. And that's where we first were, put on the map on a grand scale. Cause now we're with other fitness people that don't have social media the same way. Cause the oldies, they took a while to get on there.
Yeah.
And so by that first one, I don't think they really did. So they're like, who are these kids that have these huge lines as big as like, Jay Cutler, Phil Heath, and all these people that have been doing this for years. And I think that was that first put on notice where like, if you still think the old way is going to get you where you want, you're going to fall behind and be lost.
Where was that Olympia at?
It's always in Vegas.
Okay.
I think they just recently switched it, but yeah, it was in Vegas. And so we did that Olympia. We're put on the map more. It was just crazy. Everything
so it's like who's the core team at this time?
At that time, the first one, I think we still had the main ones. It was Joey, Paige, me, Alex. I think we had another chick like named Ainsley. It was hard to remember like all the different pieces of when they came in exactly. But I want to say we had the core at the first one.
And that was September of 2014?
The 2013.
2013. You were 22 years old.
23.
Dang.
23 years old.
The Olympia.
Yeah.
Banner, 60 feet
expo.
tall.
Because remember, what is it? The beginning of that year, we went to Fit Club or the LA FitX, you know, and that was just to walk around. Now we went from there to, we have a team and we're doing our first Olympia booth with our names on it and a whole nine. And we had a huge crowd of people, and we were really put on the map for that. So, and that was on a whole nother, you know, grand scale at the time, you know, because people just saw us on social media.
So what was like the strategy of having you move to New Jersey with Shredz? Like, what was the ultimate goal for you being there? Just doing content more?
I think it was just to do and at that time they felt that was the most appropriate. It was just for me to be there. So we come off the high of, you know, Olympia, we're selling more money, making more money, and then we go right into, you know, the beginning of the year. And right before the beginning of the year, mind you, at this time I was just doing Shredz. That's it.
Right.
I was like, you know, how could I make more money? And me and Chad at the time, because we were living in this, you know, place together over there, he was gaining more responsibilities with, you know, Arvin as his right hand man, and we came up with this idea to do a 30-day challenge. And he pitched it to me. I was like, dude, that sounds good. So we were like, let's give away $1,000. So we put it online, $1,000, 30 days. That night we had like 1,000 emails.
Dang.
And I was just like, what the fuck? What do we do?
Yeah,
you know,
more
like,
than you can handle.
Yeah, so we tried to do as many as we could, and we finally got to all of them that, you know, that signed up and everything like that. Because just because they emailed us doesn't mean they paid.
Right.
So we got through on. We did our first one. We were like, dude, that was a real success. We should do another one, but there's no way we could do this on our own. Like, we need manpower. We're only 2 people. Chad was getting more responsibilities. So in that time period, those first like 6 months of being there, like they were also bringing in the back house of like all the people that are in production, the ones that were also just as part of the success.
Just more staff.
Yeah, and they're growing it within house, bringing people to rent paid for. You get paid, you know, you work here. You know, I don't know what their agreements were.
I'm so surprised they didn't just rent a building and get offices, that they were doing this all in an apartment building and getting people leases. Like, that's cool, but that's really expensive from a business standpoint.
Like other big people had, it was a lot of people.
Yeah.
So one of the guys that they had, his name was Dave. They brought him on to be like my assistant. And so his job at that time was to do all my emails. And so he was doing them. And so that, you know, having someone that's designated to do that for you, it alleviates you.
And it was just for them just to alleviate the burden of responsibility, because you're making money outside of Shredz at this point, but they just wanted to help you like with admin stuff, whether
Correct.
it was.
Yeah. And I think Arvin was smart enough to know that he saw something that he could do, because they started doing them too, you know, down the road. But I think he saw an opportunity. It's growing me. It's growing the brand. Why not?
Yeah.
So yeah, he hired him. He just got a percentage from me, and you know, now I have 2 sources of income coming in. And mind you, I'm just pocketing all my money because I'm just paying my phone bill.
Right.
You know, so that year, which, you know, trails into the next year, I'm miserable the whole time I'm there. Like, every opportunity I could go back to California, I would.
You hated it?
You know, I hated it that much. Yeah, it was just the seasons, everything about it. You know, I got my first Frenchie because I was like depressed being there, because Chad got more responsibilities, which even though he went with me, I had to be in the place alone because I didn't make friends. So I had a Frenchie.
Yeah, you weren't like going out and doing anything outside of this little bubble.
So I'm just like with San Jose State. I knew real quick that I'm going back home. So like, how long do I need to be here?
Yeah.
You know, and so, you know, we had things lined up with more shoots, stuff like that. And then we did, at that time, we did a couple overseas expos. We did Australia, which I always like the funny story when we went there real quick and did a booth just the same way. They would call you a sick cunt, and that means like you're shredded, you're the best, whatever. Like,
you're a sick cunt.
So we were just walking around like calling everyone that. Like, after the expo, we were just like so tripping out that people do that, and they were just saying it back to us. So I decided, like, it's already faded, but like I have it says like sick cunt right here.
Did you get it in Australia?
No, as soon as I got back.
Nice.
And I just thought, you know, it's kind of like a memory to have.
Yeah.
And so we do that, then we do FIBO. I don't remember when FIBO was. I would say, I think March we did Australia, which was right after I started doing the 30-day challenge, and then we did the FIBO one. You know, we're coming back to the end where I was asking Arvin, I'm like, you know, why do I need to continue to be here? Like, can I go back or something? You know, he went back to the drawing board more, and I think now that his staff was more established, he had more people there, it made more sense for me to go, back home. Maybe he thought of the idea of like, maybe we could start something out there because we're big on, on the East Coast.
Well, because really with the internet, it didn't matter where you were based and located as long as you're producing the content. It's all on the web. So it doesn't, it's not like
but
you
I
have
think
to
in the
be.
beginning that wasn't a focus, because we're evolving. And a year later, like every year, Instagram is just getting more and we're getting better and all those things. So you don't think that a year prior to moving there, that all the things that I could have done, I could have probably just flew in for.
Right, but it just didn't materialize the way that they thought it was going to.
But I think it was still good, too, because it got me closer to Arvin, closer to the company. Obviously, Chad was able to get a job from it. All these things lined up to be exactly where I'm at. And so, we got to the point of, I do the expos, and then we're coming into our next wave. We're really gaining steam as far as, people knowing us, being on social media. And I was just ready to go home. Like I said, I was going home a lot because I was just by myself. It felt like that's where I belonged. Nothing about that place.
You're Cali boy through and through.
Yeah, it just didn't relate to me in any way, shape, or form. So,
so when did you actually leave then?
Let's see, I think there was a couple more things they had me left to do, and then I moved back. What was it? May, was it 2014? Yeah, May 2014 was like right around the time that I moved back to California. And I remember at the time too, Chad stayed back because he still had more responsibility, so he wasn't able to move back. And I got a place there, and little did I know that when I moved back, like where we were at too, where we were going as far as the next direction was going to be like one of those pivotal, like we're taking it to a whole nother level of who we are.
Shredz.
Yeah, Shredz, like even to a T where like all that leading up to that moment of moving back, there were still people that didn't know us, but we were going to a different level as far as where that was. And it was in perfect conjunction of me flying right back in. We have that next Olympia coming up. Like I had a feeling that where I was too, with how much money I was able to save and the expertise and knowledge I was acquiring with like, how to sell and just be good at what I was doing. And we had a team that was so close knit. It just felt like everything was aligning where it was supposed to. And, even back then, nobody was doing what we were doing.
Yeah.
When I'm building this with them and we're having these strategic ideas and we're doing all this stuff behind the scenes, like, people were just flabbergasted by what we were doing. And remember, like I said, too, like there was more consumers than competitors. So people weren't looking at that and going, I'm going to do that. Like I don't even think they had the idea of thinking they could do it themselves.
Right.
So
the concept hadn't been proven enough where someone wanted to take that chance on their own. So they were just buying into what you were selling.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so it's crazy to see where things were then and how much we blew it up. Because even for a little background for people with Instagram too, is like we were the first to do what we were doing in the fitness space. No one was doing that from a marketing standpoint on Instagram. Everything was marketing through going to the shows, having your little booth, none of that, doing the magazine. So people were also probably pissed off at the same time. Like, who are these fucking people being able to do what they're doing at such an exponential rate? So I moved back home, and the first thing when I moved back home was like, I wasn't even a car person at the time.
No.
I just saw this car and I was like, yo, I don't know. I like it. I don't know anything about cars.
What's the car?
But when I moved back, because I had saved all this money and I was in a place of quote unquote new wealth, I was ready.
You're just sitting
to get my first Nissan GTR, 2010 Black Edition.
Black Edition.
And then I thought to myself, this is the perfect time to end this podcast because the stuff next is so
it blows up.
It's a game changer in both ways.
It goes up, it goes down,
it does.
It goes left, it goes right.
Yeah, and that's what there's the juice.
So really, okay, I wanted to set the scene a little bit more. This is what Devin's known for, is like he's the Shredz guy. Like I posted something and someone was like, "Oh my God, that's the guy from Shredz." Like people still remember this from 2012, 2013,
Absolutely.
2014. That is what they know him for. And you've never talked about this in any kind of public light about what happened.
Mm-mm.
So you really want to tune in to the next episode because we're going to describe all of that.
All the juice.
All the juice. All the tea. Once you go so high, there's only one way to go, and it went.
Yeah, especially when you're the first one to do it.
Yeah. But we appreciate you guys listening, watching, wherever you're at. There are some ways that you can follow us, see us, view us. Our Instagram is Tell No Lies Podcast. Our website is tellnoliespod.com. And our YouTube, Tell No Lies Pod.
That was good.
Our personals. Mine's Ashley Contorno.
And mine's Devin Physique.
Thank you, guys.
See you next time. Peace.
Bye.